The tampon king gets back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on D&I.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month.
What happens when a smug TV host collides with a governor who acts like he's still fumbling for his car keys? You get Greg Gutfeld turning Tim Walz into shredded confetti, like a cardboard cutout tossed into the middle of a hurricane. From disastrous policies to clumsy political theater, Gutfeld spins Minnesota's leadership into a comedy routine that feels less like governance and more like a demolition derby on live television. Don't blink. This roast burns hotter than Walz's frozen approval ratings, with every second landing harder than the last. Just this past weekend, critics hammered him for embellishing his rank in the military. He once even joked about being an official bikini inspector. But what surfaced was no joke at all.
Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resign. When reached for comment, Walz yelled, "Hey, look over there," and then ran away. Although Walz's actions look bad to veterans, Dems say these revelations could really help him win the coward vote.
When reached for comment, Walz reportedly shouted, "Hey, look over there," before bolting. Laughter erupts. To veterans, the actions looked shameful. But as some cynics joked, maybe this revelation could help him corner the market on the coward vote. Oh, Tim Walz. If political leadership were a buffet, he'd be the lukewarm mashed potatoes nobody asked for, tasteless and unnecessary, yet still dumped on the plate. And then along comes Greg Gutfeld, swinging sarcasm like a chainsaw in a fireworks store, ripping apart Walz's blunders with the intensity of a comedian at full throttle. This isn't leadership. This is performance art gone wrong. Less like painting on a canvas, more like finger painting with spoiled mayonnaise. Messy, chaotic, unforgettable. But the scandals don't end with rank embellishment. Walz once tried to explain away a drunk driving charge by exploiting his military background. He claimed he wasn't actually drunk, insisting he simply misheard instructions on the sobriety test.
Exploited his military background to cover up his crime. He said it was related to his service and that he actually wasn't drunk. He just misheard the instructions in the drunk test. He blew a super high level. It was like, .2, driving 100 miles an hour. And then when he's running for office, he said that he wasn't drunk. I mean, this guy has creep written all over it. He created a snitch line, but lies about his personal infractions. He doesn't even own up to it. This is a guy who pushes a hoax about a sex on a couch, and then the closer you look at him, he's a creepy cuck.
Before we go deeper, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Now, Tim Walz, running Minnesota, is like watching a substitute teacher try to wrangle a classroom full of caffeinated raccoons. His speeches sound like the ramblings of someone who skimmed Leadership for Dummies and decided that was enough to rule a state. The result? A flawless disaster. Under his watch, the land of 10,000 lakes has become the land of 10,000 blunders. Inflation climbing, businesses fleeing, crime spiking. His solutions read like parodies of real governance. Even his takes on voting laws are absurd. Walz once claimed Donald Trump was making it harder specifically for women to vote. When pressed on how, the only answer that seemed to emerge was math problems. It's proof that the most dangerous weapon against a leftist politician is a follow-up question. Ask one, and suddenly their carefully rehearsed slogans collapse like a cheap tent in a thunderstorm. And then there's his memory lapses, moments where Walz seems to forget who he is entirely.
Saw just recently Donald Trump's executive order to make it more difficult, specifically to women, trying to make it more difficult for women to be able to vote. We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote.
Wait, so Trump is making it more difficult for women to vote? How so? Math problems? But it's further proof that the most dangerous thing for a leftist is a follow-up question, which is why you never hear any. But I guess questioning elections is okay now. But the best moment came when Walz forgot who he is.
Greg Gutfeld doesn't even have to break a sweat. Roasting Walz is like dunking on a man who showed up to a job interview blindfolded, wearing Crocs. Walz takes the stage as though armed for battle with nothing but a kazoo and a whiteboard scribbled with the word feelings. It's almost as if he's begging for humiliation, serving himself up on a roast platter, whispering, "Go for the kill." At this point, it isn't even political satire anymore. It's competitive sarcasm. Walz arrives with nothing but glitter, glue, and a participation ribbon, while Gutfeld brings the firepower. The imbalance is stunning. Walz is simply put strange. Even his peers admit it. "He's strange," one said. Another added, "We're the same age, but how does he look so much younger?" No, he's a strange guy. One anecdote captures it perfectly. Years ago, during the riots, Walz called a White House contact in a panic. "My house is being surrounded by people with American flags," he said. "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" His contact, baffled, asked for clarification. Walz insisted they were MAGA people, about 15,000 of them, and begged for help. Eventually, reassurances calmed the situation.
Walz is a strange dude.
Oh, he's strange.
He is strange. Him and I are the same age. How does he look so much younger?
No, he's a strange guy.
Strange.
You know, he called up years ago. I was in the White House, and he said, "My house is being surrounded by people with American flags." I said, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" He said, "I think they're going to attack me." This was during the riots and everything else. They were MAGA people. You know, they like the American flag, all right? And they also had Trump. And I said, "How do you know?" There were about 15,000, he said, "Could you put out a word like that I'm your friend?" I don't even know him, but that's the only time I ever spoke to him. And if you look back long ago, tweets, before Truth, tweets, long ago, I put out a statement, "He's a good man, the governor. He's on our side." I didn't know him, but I didn't want him to get hurt. And everybody put down their flags and they left. Yes. He said it was a miracle. He said it was a miracle.
Walz later called it a miracle. A miracle? Or just another case of dramatics from a man who always seems to see shadows in the corner. Let's shift to the economy, where Tim Walz has managed to turn prosperity into parody. Inflation climbing, businesses packing up, jobs bleeding across state lines. Walz looked at all of it and thought the answer was more taxes. Tax the air, tax the smiles, maybe even tax the very thought of moving to South Dakota. Companies are escaping Minnesota like it's a haunted house built from climate mandates and PowerPoint slides about equity. The place once called the land of opportunity now looks like the land of laminated red tape. Gutfeld skewered Walz's failures mercilessly, asking how anyone could possibly make California look like a capitalist paradise by comparison, but Walz pulled it off. Under his leadership, the only things booming are bloated government paperwork and the headaches of the middle class. And then comes crime. If Walz had a handbook for public safety, it would look like something a toddler scribbled in crayon. He treats law enforcement the way a child treats matches, curious, reckless, and destined for disaster. His grand solution? Blame society, hold hands, hope criminals are inspired by interpretive dance. It's like handing out scented candles while the building burns to the ground.
On the same bad cocaine, but Kamala can't speak, he can't speak, Biden was so high he couldn't remember anything. Like, this is literally the dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus.
He doesn't even need makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for? Yeah. I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months from now.
I'm especially talking about these old white guys who seem to disappoint us on a regular basis in this country.
Dude. You're an old white guy. And you're right, you are a huge disappointment. I guess hating himself is the first thing he's nailed correctly. Because Waltz saying old white men suck isn't a political stance, it's his confession. Waltz calling people old and white is like Maxine Waters making fun of someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. He wants to execute more DEI policies, and Trump wants to execute murderous gang members. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see the difference?
Gutfeld didn't just mock this, he detonated it. He pointed out that the only exam Minnesota kids are acing is Offense 101. Under Walz, schools no longer resemble institutions of learning. They've become stages for amateur performance art. Detention, gone. Replaced with TikTok therapy sessions and participation trophies. Teachers lecture less on history, more on hashtags. And then Walz, with a straight face, claimed old white men are the problem. Gutfeld fired back instantly. You're an old white man, Tim. That's the first thing you've nailed correctly. Calling himself out without realizing it isn't politics, it's a confession. It's like Maxine Waters mocking someone for shopping at Wigs R Us. Ridiculous, tone-deaf, and laughable. On to the pandemic. Waltz acted like it was his audition for America's next top authoritarian. Churches, shut down. Bars, dragged to court. But protests? Oh, those were suddenly essential. Apparently, the virus knew how to tell the difference between a Sunday service and a Marxist chant. Who knew a mask could double as a political filter? Gutfeld went for the jugular. Waltz had no problem banning Grandma's bingo night, yet happily flung the streets wide open for mass demonstrations. The hypocrisy wasn't public health, it was theater. Theater with a clipboard and state power. And then came the budget surplus. Minnesota had a mountain of extra cash, so big that even Walz couldn't ignore it. Taxpayers hoped they'd see relief. Instead, Walz treated the money like a monopoly jackpot at a government garage sale. More consultants, more bureaucracy, more useless pet projects. Rumors even joked about a taxpayer-funded mural of Waltz staring dramatically into the distance. Gutfeld summed it up with precision. Giving Waltz a surplus is like handing a toddler a credit card and telling him to buy only the essentials. Sure, Tim, because what the Department of Overregulation really needed was a shiny espresso machine and a taxpayer-funded yoga retreat.
Says that Waltz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Waltz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every...
Under Walz, red tape has become a full-contact sport. In Minnesota, you can't even run a lemonade stand without 14 permits, a background check, and a pronoun declaration. It's Soviet-style governance with slick branding, dressed up as progress, but delivering headaches instead of hope. And then, his strange infatuation with Gavin Newsom. Walz clings to California's governor like a fanboy, determined to transform Minneapolis into San Francisco's colder, clumsier cousin. He watches Newsom burn down California with the enthusiasm of a scented candle made from bad policy and thinks, yes, perfect. Let's add frostbite and subtract jobs. Gutfeld mocked it ruthlessly. If Gavin Newsom is a shampoo ad with the ego of a Bond villain, then Tim Walz is the confused understudy who wandered in halfway through and started improvising in Pig Latin. Walz struts around like the malfunctioning offspring of Bernie Sanders and a traffic light, posing as a savior while tripping over every agency he touches. Transportation. Don't even start. Walz pitched a multi-million-dollar bullet train that might arrive about the same time dinosaurs return. Meanwhile, Minnesota roads resemble a post-apocalyptic Mario Kart course, leaving drivers praying their suspensions survive the week. Walz dreams of Hogwarts trains, while potholes swallow real cars whole. The media's tone? Mourning. Not reporting Walz's losses, but mourning them. That's how ridiculous it's gotten.
So the tone of the media was one of sadness, not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, dude!" It's no wonder they don't do follow-up questions with Democrats. They're like the top layer of day-old skimpy bean dip. What's underneath, you don't want to see.
Gutfeld's conclusion? Walz is basically a magic 8-ball in orthopedic shoes. Shake him. And the answer is always some muddled jargon about intersectional frameworks or equity gardening. Walz loves to brand himself as a down-to-earth farm dad, but his version of folksy is sipping kombucha at a tailgate and asking if the brisket is locally sourced. Gutfeld crushed him. Walz is about as blue-collar as tofu at a monster truck rally. Nothing screams working-class hero like quoting Noam Chomsky in a fleece vest. Even his personal moments look bizarre. A viral clip showed Walz greeting his wife with an awkward handshake-hug hybrid that left audiences cringing. One commentator said, "I've seen warmer embraces between Chris Christie and a salad." Meanwhile, rural Minnesota towns cry out for real leadership, jobs, infrastructure, a voice. Instead, they get Walz, live-streaming bureaucratic TED Talks with titles like Empathy Through Regulations. Gutfeld crowned him the IKEA governor. Comes in a box, half the screws missing, and by the end, you're crying over a wobbly mess. Policies? They read like Pinterest boards, hashtags, oat milk, and interpretive dance. Schools turned into activism workshops. Crime plans sound like improv skits. Budgets blown like Monopoly money. And through it all, Walz struts with wide eyes, convinced it's brilliance. But Gutfeld sliced straight through the illusion. He showed America that behind the fleece vest and awkward grin is a man reading expired IKEA instructions, confused, underwhelming, and missing half the screws.